When traditional Russian icon painters begin work on a new piece, they start by covering a simple wooden panel with a mixture of chalk and glue. The whiteness will shine out from the finished painting, representing the purity of the human soul. Then they give their saints shape and colour using paints made of traditional materials, bright blue from Afghan mines, pale green from corroded copper, deep red from Spanish mercury. Then, if the icon is a special one, they cover most of the picture with gold, often leaving only the saint's face to peer out of a little window. And the final step, if it is a very special icon indeed, is to set precious stones around it. They do this because while the paint represents the earth, the jewels are the symbols of heaven. My first book was inspired by those paint materials, the twigs, stones, and bugs that are the raw materials of human art. But as I was researching it, I often heard stories about jewels, those other, more famous sources of colour. I heard of how people were once hanged for picking up amber pebbles from the beaches of northern Europe, how the deepest colour for black was named after a rare jewel formed by the same process as coal, how Christopher Columbus was thrown into prison for not admitting to his royal sponsors that he had found pearls. And perhaps, most extraordinary of all, I heard how, with recent discoveries of how to make gem-quality diamonds in laboratories, the market for the most precious stones is tottering on the edge of change. And then I was given a ring. It is an engagement ring, and it's 3 small square stones, one pale green like chewing gum, one dark green like a sea-worn bottle, and one deep red like a smooth brick, are made of glass. They don't have a carat value like most jewels, but they do have a wonderful story. They are 800 years old, and they were scraped from a wall almost 80 years ago by a boy who later became a bishop in a place whose sacred beauty had affected the lives of entire empires. Perhaps the greatest church in Christendom is the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul, which was once Constantinople, the capital of Byzantine Christianity for many centuries. But in 1453, the Muslims captured the city and the Hagia Sophia became a mosque. This was greatly resented by many people over the centuries, including one Christian boy who grew up there in the 1920s. He and his friends sometimes pretended to be Muslim boys and went up to the women's section in the gallery, put their hands behind their backs, and pretended to pray while they prized out the mosaic stones from the wall to sell to tourists in the marketplace. When this boy grew up, he became a priest, then a metropolitan or Orthodox bishop, and he forgot his childish mischief. But one day, some years ago when he was very old, he found his 3 last stones and gave them to my fiancé. Later, when we decided to make them into an engagement ring, they became jewels in their own right, and a reminder to me of how the most precious thing about stones in a jewellery box is not always their rarity, their size, or their perfection. It is their stories. So with my new ring on my finger, I set off on journeys to find them. Not so much the gems as the stories behind them. The search took me to the greatest gem fair in the world, to the ancient city of jewels in Sri Lanka, to Myanmar to visit the fabled ruby mines of Mogok, to the Japanese village where a young noodle seller dreamed of growing pearls in oysters, to Antwerp's busy diamond district, and to California to meet a man whose father invented emeralds and who himself has found a way to make perfect yellow diamonds. This book is mostly written in praise of small things. There are a few boulders in its pages, but they are really just for show. Even the biggest jewels are mostly rather small. The word in English comes from the Old French for little joys, and in gem terms, the phrase hen's egg usually means gigantic. The book is also largely a celebration of mineral things. Only jet, coral, and the creatures that reluctantly make up the insides of some rare pearls have ever been alive, while other prized stones, including amber and plant opals and ordinary pearls, have exuded and or been extruded from living things. But most gems are crystals that have formed in the depths of the earth and emerged millions, or in one case hundreds, of years later, with a beauty for which men and women have, on occasion, been prepared to commit theft, treason, torture, and murder.